And good evening, good evening, good evening. Beautiful Monday, July the 29th. We're wrapping up another month. Again, my goodness, time is flying. But it's such a joy for me to be with you this evening. Of course, as you know, the lady of the show is back and she has done the last couple of nights tremendous. Last week, Wednesday, last week, Friday, yesterday, last night, I tell you, amazing. Two tremendous shows. And I made a note of a comment that one of the African young ladies made on the show on Friday night. And I tell you, it's going to become a proverb of mine to live with. And I'll mention that to you in just a few moments. But let me welcome all of you that are joining us tonight. I was just looking down the list of persons. Of course, you know I can't do it as lovely as the lovely Marcia Weeks. But I try my best, and I'm sure you appreciate that. I know you do. But nevertheless, Ansel Seeley, great to have you with us tonight. Although my name is not Marcia, but nevertheless, it's good to have you. It's me. Great to have you back in with us this evening. And Queen Bee, yes, you've liked and shared. Thank you so very much. And I do want to encourage you actually to like the show and share the show, the YouTube, share the link, share the Facebook, follow on Facebook so that we can expand. And don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Please remember tonight to give us that thumbs up, okay? So Ansel, great to have you. Queen Bee, great to have you. It's me, Junie Rock. Good night to you as well. Monica Ince and Cecilia Miller, all you loyal opposition. Lucinda Aline, Owen Hines, great to have you as well. The opposition that's locked on from Philadelphia. It's such a tremendous pleasure to have all of you with us tonight. And I'm looking forward to you being able again tonight to hear some impressive information that will continue through the process of the evening. So, Peter King, good afternoon to you. Marcia, Strong Woman Weeks. Talk show, yes, sir. You're absolutely correct. Righteous Coalition of Bajans. Good afternoon to you too. Of course, Jonah. Let me get all these folk here. I tell you, my thing is slowing down a little bit in terms of its scrolling. So I'm just trying to pull that. Come on, work thing. What am I doing? Oh, okay. I think I got it. Yeah, good. Lucinda, Aline, Cecilia Miller, Owen Hines. Yes. Marcia, good evening to you. Again, I know you're going to keep me on my toes with that national anthem. Tony Paris, Vernon Garnes, great to have you. Peter King, yes, thank you. You're waiting, you're listening. Thank you so very much. Enjoying Bajan live people, Peter. Yes. Mildred Ben, good evening to you as well. Diana Husbands. Again, oh yeah, Peter King, you are a loyal opposition who intend to be ruling government. So therefore, I will remain a righteous Bajan of the coalition. Yes, sir. That's right. This is a show that produces the most knowledge and information in Barbados about Barbados. And we are so happy indeed that Marcia has made this possible. Of course, you're right. I not might be opening the show tonight. I am opening the show tonight. Peter, God bless you. CG as well. Accountability and transparency. Yes, again, Peter, we got to hold them to account. And I'll come back and chat about a video I was watching this evening. Good evening, Sir Alfred, again locked on from Brooklyn. I know I can't remember who it is, but someone else is locked on from the United Kingdom. We're so happy. And, I really must tell you, for people who are locked on from the UK, you're 4 or 5 hours ahead. Oh, my goodness. And I tell you, that's to be commended. I mean, because it would be, even if it's 4 hours, it would be 4 minutes after 11 o'clock in the night. And by the time we get through tonight, it's going to be what? Uh, Something around 2 o'clock in the morning. I tell you, thank you all so very much for supporting the Marcia Week show. Peter King, great to have you with us. Great to have you with us. Ryan Rock, and great to have you too, Ryan. Good night to you as well. Thank you so much, Marcia. Pleasure to have you with me again tonight as well. FX Trading BB. I love that. Those who are afraid of being investigated have something to hide. But listen to this one, FX. You remember those two young ladies from Kenya that were on the show on Friday? One of them made a statement that I want to comment on. I just want to, well, not comment on, I want to share. And she said this: when we lose our fear, they lose their power. And I love that. When we lose our fear, they lose their power. And I tell you, there's a little biblical verse. You would expect me as a reverend to quote a biblical verse. Come on, guys. You would expect that of me. And there's a little biblical verse that says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and a sound mind. So we are not afraid. There are actually, I understand, 365 fear not verses in the Bible, one verse for every single day. So clearly, God does not subscribe to us being afraid. As a matter of fact, He often told His people in the Bible to be strong and of a good courage. All right, be strong and of a good courage. So, yes, we're looking forward to a great night this evening. Good evening to you too, Pauline. Pleasure to have you with us, locked in. And yes, like and share. Bim the Beautiful. This is the show that, thanks to Marcy and the crew, indeed. And when Marcy and Caswell got together a year ago, I heard her say the other night, I believe, uh, you know, uh, goodness gracious me, I think it was upcoming August. And she mentioned it last night, a year ago. I doubt they even believed that we would be where we are tonight. But here we are, and we are fighting for our nation. Good evening to you, Guy Fawkes, and I hope you're another Guy Fawkes that we used to know many years ago that blew up the British Parliament, or tried to blow up the British Parliament. I used to celebrate that many years ago with my dad and my brother and my sister down at Boscobel School on the windmill. We used to put the tires up on top of the windmill and burn them, and all the fireworks and the starlights and the rockets. Oh my goodness, those were wonderful, wonderful days and memories for me as a child. So really, really wonderful. Dale Worrell, good evening to you as well. And Pedro Gemment, Flo Joe Maloney. Yes, Flo Joe. That was one of my favorite athletes many years ago. St. Ches, good night to you. Nat Grant, indeed. Sandra Brewster, good night to all the people in the opposition. Jonah, what's that? What percentage of the population is asking for a change of government? Because I think that is something that people should know in order to know what the fight is against. Well, I tell you, I have no doubt, Jonah, as I move around this country, that we are in for quite a surprise. Because remember, Jonah, I talked about the whole aspect of the iceberg and the little 1/10 above. And if government thinks that the 9/10 is above, they're sadly mistaken. They're going to be in for a rude awakening whenever the elections are called. Yes, absolutely, Marcia. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. FX trading, yes, I agree with you. That quote that young lady gave is extremely motivating. And I trust that you all grasp it, you make a note of it, and live it throughout your life, because I'm told that courage is only found in the face of fear. And so we are of great courage. We are of good courage. God continuously recommends to us to be of good courage. Yes. So we are so happy to have all of you joining us tonight. Kelly B, Sonia Perch, Jonah, yes, Beverly Prescott, Camillus Lewis. Good night to you. And boy, I tell you, I may be chopping up some names tonight, but I know you all would forgive me. You have to, because that's what the good Lord said: forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So if you want Him to forgive you, you're gonna have to forgive me too. All right. So please do that. If I what is the word? If I mash up your name, please forgive me. Please, please, please forgive me. I'm so excited about tonight and all that's going to be happening. So it's a real joy to have all of you, as is always my tradition now. I want to start the show with the national anthem. Of course, I heard that song last night for the loyal opposition, for the Mr. Thorne. And I smiled. I said, "Boy, I tell you, the people set out one thing for evil, but God turned it around and is using it for good." But let's start the show off on a strong footing with that national anthem. So, ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the sovereign republic of Barbados. Yes, strict guardians of our heritage, firm craftsmen of our faith, our national pledge. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. That's the pledge that as Barbadians we have made. We have not pledged to a political party. We have not pledged to an organization. We have pledged to our national flag, and we have pledged to our country, Barbados. And that is why I have taken very seriously the actions of our Prime Minister carrying our flag to Ghana, I believe it was, and lowering it into a hole. I don't care whether it was buried. I don't care whether it was left in the hole and covered. I don't care if it was brought back out. It should never have gone down in the grave hole in the first place. It is the sovereign symbol of a country. And the Prime Minister desecrated that symbol when she permitted that flag to be lowered into a hole, a grave, and a casket. That would never happen to the American flag. That American flag, as I've said so many times on this show before, when a soldier has fallen in battle, that American flag covers that casket. It goes to the gravesite, and you never see that flag go down into the hole, in spite of all the soldier might have done, how he's honored and respected. You will never see that flag go into the ground. Instead of that, 4 soldiers on the end of each end of the flag will fold it meticulously and hand it to the family. And I tell you, when I heard and I saw that, I said, you see, when a leader of a country desecrates the sovereign symbol of a nation, you open up the country to all kinds of spiritual, demonic, and negative components. And that is exactly what has happened with this flag, with this situation with her and the flag. But I don't want to take a lot of time on that tonight. I want to touch on another subject before I get into the evening with General Caswell and Maxine and Kemar and the others that will be joining me. Um, Yes, thank you, Jonah. It is highly regarded internationally. Thank you for that. That burying a flag of a country is a sign of disrespect of the highest order. Thank you, Jonah. I really do appreciate you making that observation and bringing it to our attention. Absolutely. Now, I want to turn my attention for a few moments to this fiasco that happened at the Olympics, at the opening of the Olympics. And let me be clear this evening. It was the most disrespectful, sacrilegious act ever leveled at Christianity that I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I'm saying this to you right now. Some people may agree with me, some people may disagree with me. But I would say to the Prime Minister, order our athletes home. Let us protest what was done in a disrespect of in excess of 2.4 billion Christians across the world. I am not even going to play the clip. The clip is so nasty and sacrilegious. I won't even play the clip for you to see, because I'm sure you'll do your own research. And let me say this, some of you may be saying, well, Pastor, you're being a little harsh in terms of protest. No, I'm not. I am not being harsh. Let me remind you, all right? History is a significant, and maybe that is why the water passed the cybercrime bill, so we don't have access to information that is on the internet in terms of our history. But in 1980, the United States boycotted the Summer Olympic Games in Moscow to protest the late 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, 65 nations refused to participate in the games, and only 80 countries sent athletes to compete. And that is out of 196 countries. All right, let's understand this. I would say to our Prime Minister, if you have any intestinal fortitude and you respect the Christian fundamental faith of your country, call our athletes home and protest what was done at the opening of the Olympics. And why can I say that? Well, let me read to you clause 50 out of the Olympic Charter. This is what it says. No kind of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues, or other areas. So what the Olympic Committee did is that it literally ignored and disobeyed its own clauses concerning this matter, because it was undoubtedly a religious presentation of the Last Supper of Jesus Christ and his disciples on the way to the cross of Calvary for the redemption of humanity. The one significantly powerful and meaningful act in all Christianity apart from the resurrection of Jesus. And I say to you today, if you are a Christian, even if you're not, you should never disrespect anybody's religion or faith. I respect the fact that people have a liberty and a freedom to believe whatever they want to believe. I have my belief and my faith concerning Jesus Christ. Rastas have this, Muslims have theirs, Buddhists have theirs, Hindus have theirs. But I'll tell you this, what I'm observing is that the one religion that the world seems to be hell-bent on attacking to destroy is the Christian faith, because we are the ones that are adamantly standing up against the LGBTQ2 plus alphabet group across the world that the European Union, including France, is trying to promote across the world, to the point where they have made the Olympic Committee violate their own laws. And I make it abundantly clear. Furthermore, and I want you to hear this, the Olympic, and I'm making sure, charter identifies the fact that in striving for a gender parity at the Olympics, the IOC has also reinforced a gender binary that categorizes athletes as male or female. It overlooks transgender and non-binary athletes, whether you agree or not. That is in the Olympic Charter. They have made it clear that as the Olympic Committee, they only identify male and female. So to have this presentation done by drag queens and transgenders and homosexuals and lesbians in a most sacrilegious manner is despicable. And our Prime Minister, I am going to wait to hear what our Prime Minister is going to say to the International Olympic Committee on this matter on the behalf of Barbados. Because I can tell you right now, all 280,000 Barbadians are not in agreement with this. So you need to speak on the behalf of our country, not on the behalf of Ferdinand Nichols or Pawi or the Catholics or the Anglicans. I can tell you, every religious group and anybody with any moral fortitude and fabric will tell you straight off the bat, this is disrespectful and unacceptable. And I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear on the matter that we as a country are opposed to it. Bring our athletes home. Protest the matter. There are leaders across the world that are beginning to stand up and protest the matter. Now, as to whether they're going to go as far as not allowing their athletes to continue to compete, I don't know. But we don't have to wait until somebody else does something in order to do what is right. Over 2.4 billion, not 2.4 million, 2.4 billion, a quarter of the world's population whose faith is riveted in Christianity, have been offended by this matter. And I am saying to you, Madam Prime Minister, do the right thing. Do the right thing and bring our athletes home, because France has disrespected the Christian faith. It has violated its own clauses relative to the expressions of any religious or social or racial or political propaganda. It has also disrespected its policy on transgender and non-binary athletes. There is no provision at this time for any other athletes but men and women to compete in the Olympic Games. And to have that kind of a start of a presentation under the guise of inclusion. No, there's no guise of inclusion. If the transgenders and the alphabet group want to have a Olympic Games, let them have their own. But don't bring it into the category of these Olympic Games. You defy science. This is not, I don't know where these people get this madness of gender over and sexuality. Even the animals can't make a mistake. You don't have no dog switching or cat switching or parrot switching any of them. I mean, come on, folk. Let's get our heads, come on. You know, I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I am telling you right now, I'm opposed to I am not even watching the games. I have understood that millions of people have canceled their subscription to the Olympic Games. I understand that there are several high-level promoters and advertisers that are canceling their support of these Olympics. So many, I can't even name them, that are canceling their contracts and so on with the Olympics as a result of this act and protesting the act. And I thank God for those who have the intestinal fortitude to stand up and make the point very clear. I don't want to see it. I'm not interested in seeing no Olympic Games. I'm interested to see it. France has a lot of problems as it stands. You will already recall the protests when they just wanted to change the retirement year by 1 year. They nearly burned the whole of Paris down. You already recall the challenges that Macron is having. Well, of course, you know what he is. I don't even have to get into that. Now, by the same token, don't get my passion on the matter wrong. God is not willing that any perish, but all come to repentance. All, not some, all. And throughout Scripture, even the Muslims and the Hindus and the Buddhists don't identify any other gender but male and female. Try that with the Muslims. Try what you did in France with the Muslims and see if they don't blow up the whole of Paris. See if they don't blow up the whole country for you. But you see, Christians are very tolerant. We take all the blows, all of that kind of stuff we take. And so people take advantage of us and feel that they can wipe their feet on us. You cannot do that with me. Let me be very clear. You can't do that with me. And you can't do that with Jesus Christ either. I think you all will remember the man went into a public square in the temple, sat down, planted a whip, and he did not demonstrate a very loving spirit when he got up and started to throw blows in that courtyard. And I can tell you, he wasn't aiming at the doves and he wasn't aiming at the sheep or the bullocks. I can tell you that beyond all shadow of a doubt. And I will also tell you, he had to be a man of substantive build because the guards in the temple courtyard did not approach him. The record does not show them approaching him. And to me, it would say he had to be a man of some type of imposing stature, not them little wishy-washy, effeminate images and things that we get concerning that matter. All right. So I just want to clear that. I can tell you that there's not a person on this show that is a presenter that will not agree with me on the matter. But that is our position, certainly is my position with regards to this. And if I was in a position to do so, I would call my athletes home. America did it in 1980. Barbados can do it in 2024. We do not have to wait for anybody else to take the lead. We can do what is the right thing to do. And that is the problem. And then quickly before Caswell joins me, today I was watching a video of the presentation, I think, of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I think that's how they refer, anyhow, the Minister of Finance in the British Parliament. And I sent it to the others because coming into office, you know what they have done? They have issued an audit on all of government's expenditure, and they're going after all of the wastage. And in terms of contracts, people are going to have to pay back money that they were given by the government for promises that were never fulfilled by the government. And I'm going to tell you this. I have already said it here on this show that when the government changes in this country, when the government is replaced by whatever party or independent candidates or whatever, this government is going to be replaced in the next general election. And I want to be one of the people leading the charge to lock some of them up. And I'm not joking about it. Because when we look at the amount of money just in three matters, $190-something million unaccounted for in our country. When you hear Kemar talk about money being collected for the sewage tax that does not, in a sense, and I'm just expressing it in a layman's term, pass through the books of the government so we can see it. The money collected at the pump. Let me tell you, the government has to give an account. That is what we are talking about tonight. We are talking about accountability, not just transparency. Now, the approach to transparency in my books is over. From here on in, accountability. And I am going to tell you, I want to be high on the list of persons on an independent grouping to investigate the expenditure and the borrowing and monies that this government has utilized during its tenure. I want to be on that because I want to be one of the people to help lock them up. And I'm not joking about the matter. I'm very, very serious about the matter. And the reason I'm serious is because, as I've said before, people think that the money that government is spending is their money. Not a single government minister, parliamentarian, or senator is taking the money out of their pockets to pay anything. It is you and it is me, the taxpayers of Barbados, that when government has finished putting us in over excess of $8 billion in debt, you, me, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren are going to have to be the people to pay it back. And such being the case, if you're borrowing money, you must tell us. This is not a kind request. This is a demand. We are telling you, you have to give us an account. You are our employees. We are your employers. And when a managing director of a company who has other subsidiary people under him managing other subsidiaries, they have to give an account to the expenditure and the revenues generated. It is not a joke. Companies demand it of their administrative staff. And you're going to tell me that a government that is utilizing your money and my money is going to want to say they don't have to give an account? I'm not interested in no Paris speaks where you want to get up and have a photo optic and talk foolishness. I want you to give an account of the $194 million that we can't see a house, we can't see a completed sewage project, and the Kensington Oval in showing 25 million US dollars. That is that, and that is just three I'm addressing. There are myriads of others that we could talk about because I don't see $5 million at Oystens up to now. I don't see $5 million at Oystens. Let me tell you that. So and I'm not. My blood pressure is fine. Okay, so you all don't get worried about my blood pressure. My blood pressure is absolutely fine. But I'm passionate about what I believe. I'm committed to what I believe. And that is my position on the matter. So we are demanding. We are demanding. I want government to hear. I want the Mr. Marshall to hear it. He knows me. I know him. Prime Minister Motley, she knows me. I know her. Minister Sandra Husbands, she knows me. I know her. Several of the others, I guess, know me. I don't know a lot of them personally. I have not had a lot of interaction with them. But I'm saying to you all, you took an oath of office to serve. And the very word minister is defined as a position of service, not a position of lording it over individuals. That is what it means. Okay, so let us be clear. You are our servants. We are not yours. You are our servants. We are your masters. And as a result, we are demanding accountability from you. It is not an option. You have to give it. And we are not going to be backing up and holding out anything where you are concerned on the matter. All right. So, folks, that's where I am at in terms of my opening salvo tonight with regards to this matter at the Olympics. I needed to express that, and I only discovered this evening as I was preparing for the show, and Marcia was in touch with me, that some of you wanted to have it addressed, and I didn't even know that, but I intended to address it tonight, and I have done so. And I'm pretty sure from the comments that I'm seeing in the chat that all of you are in agreement with me. If not all of you, certainly the majority of you are in agreement with me. And as I said, I'm calling on the Prime Minister to call our athletes home, boycott this Olympic Games. Okay, that's just my position. Now, there's a wonderful lady that I've just seen slip into the back office. And I know that last night I listened to a tremendous presentation by Mr. Franklin, and I know he will be joining us as well concerning the credit unions in Barbados. And I want to say that we are not going to be on this show attacking and leveling any accusations against any specific or particular credit union. I believe what Mr. Franklin did last night was to educate us concerning the credit union movement and how the credit union ought to function. That is not necessarily an indictment upon how they are functioning, but what it does do is it gives us as Barbadians the information so that as we observe as members of the credit union, as we observe how they operate, that they are operating under the law and under the clauses and constitution and bylaws that they themselves have committed to. So, we want to engage that tonight. So as soon as I get a affirmative from Maxine, I'll be bringing her in. She's given me that thumbs up, and I have the wonderful opportunity of welcoming you to the show tonight, Maxine.
Thank you very much.
And having you all to myself. I don't have no Caswell. I don't have no Nobody at all. Just you and me so far,
Yes.
But it's so nice to see you.
Thank you very
I
much.
I thank God for all that He's doing, with your eyes and so on. We know you've gone through some challenges there, and you certainly seem to have come through them very well. But we're looking forward to what you want to share with us tonight. So,
I listen to you, and I'm gonna start with something that we do in the credit union movement. There's something called the credit union prayer. This
the
is
credit union prayer.
the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. So let me read it quickly for
Yes,
our
please.
members.
Yes, please. I'm making a
Lord,
note of it.
right? Lord, is the credit union prayer is the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, and it says, "Lord, make me an instrument of Thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life." And it says, and this is from an annual report, this is the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. It is used almost universally
Hmm.
throughout the world as a credit union opening prayer at board meetings and shareholder meetings. And this
Wow.
is something that we say, and for me is something that I mean and I feel that we should strive for.
Yes,
Having
totally
said
agree.
that, it is right. It's a powerful prayer. It's a
Oh,
prayer
yes.
that reminds us of who we are supposed to be as human being, and as um, how we operate in the context. Sorry, that's somebody calling me. As soon as I turned on. Um, so basically, for me, I started with that because it is something that I have lived for the last 40, almost 41 years. And I say that because it is something that I have
Maxine, we lost your volumes. All of a sudden, you dropped out. Your mic is not muted, but we can't hear you. No, you want to try to pop out and come back in again? That may reactivate it, unless you touch something. And don't ask me what. I haven't the clue. No, still not hearing you. Okay. All right. Well, I see General Caswell is in the waiting room, so let me bring him in this evening while we wait for Maxine to rejoin us. Caswell, welcome, my brother.
Yes, good
Welcome to the
evening.
Marcy Week show tonight.
Yeah, good evening and thank you. And good night to all those who are listening to the show tonight, those who are watching. We are appreciative of your viewership and your attention.
Oh
Eh,
yes, oh yes.
so I and also I'm grateful for the comments that
Oh my,
people
yes.
see me and say that we are making a difference. And I am grateful that people would at least let us know. And I pledge to continue to the best of my ability. You know, it is, one of the little girls from Kenya made a comment the other night, and she said, "When we lose our fear," remember that comment?
Yes. Oh yes. I use it already this evening. It's a
Yeah,
very motivational,
and
comment.
I will comment that thing to them. And mind you, I don't know, I probably never had that kind of fear. I somehow was raised differently. So I don't have that fear. Maxine will tell you. We have been at the credit unions for years. Maxine said 40 years, and that dates me.
Well, somebody made a comment. I'm looking for it here, Maxine. Somebody made this comment about you, so I have to let you see it. So, okay, but we still not hearing you. What you went and did wrong? I know you're hearing us, but we are not hearing you. I'm going to mute the mic and unmute it again. All right, she popped back out again, Caswell. She was on just before you came on, and she was just beginning to address the matter of the credit unions. And she read us St. Francis of Assisi's prayer,
Yes.
which she said is prayed at the beginning
Of
of
all credit
every credit union meeting.
yeah.
She was beginning there, and then we lost her audio. So hopefully, when she comes back in, we can let her pick up from there. And I know that both of you, I believe, are going to be addressing credit unions in Barbados, the credit union movement. Um, I've mentioned already that the show is not intending to attack any credit union, but simply to educate and inform persons as to how the credit union movement functions. And I listened to you last night. As you were talking, you went back to the origins, the beginnings of the credit union. I can't remember his name right now. You would know him, a real gentleman. He plays at the St. Matthias Church, the organ. But he, I think, was the person who started the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union.
So no, the guy who started
A slim, dark gentleman.
No, but he was among the people. You mean born?
Born, yes.
He was
among.
He was
All right, let's see. Let me see if we can get. Let me see if I can get Maxine back in again.
As a saving society back in 1968.
Are you hearing me? No?
Yes, loud and clear. Hearing you beautiful. Yes. And I coming back to you first, because ladies first. I can just let Caswell finish his comment, and then we'll come back to you first, and then he can follow you. All right, you the opening batsman in this match. Well, no, I open already, so you will be coming in. I help to take off the new ball, so you should be able to play. So really it is.
But it started in 1968.
Yes.
But it didn't show much growth, and then it actually went into some of the banks. It got registered as a credit union in 70 because the registrar would not allow them to register as a credit union because they were not showing the kind of growth that they would have looked for, and then it actually went down to a situation where they had about less than 55 members and $1,000 in the bank. Then Ralph Boyce, who you will all know as a former chief education officer.
Yes, I remember
he worked in Jamaica, and he was a credit unionist in Jamaica. And when he came back, he wanted to start a credit union too. But Carter, who was the registrar of cooperatives at the time, convinced him that rather than start a new credit union, he should revive the fledgling credit union that but it wasn't really fledgling, it was almost dead. And he then got together with people like the same Keith Bourne and Clarence Greenidge, Olive Trotman, and they started to get the credit union going. Ralph and O'Brien Trotman. O'Brien Trotman was the general secretary of NUPW, and everything operated out of NUPW. It used to be people considered the NUPW credit union, but it wasn't. And you had to be at first, if you weren't a member of NUPW, you couldn't join the credit union. But Ralph saw that loophole and said, no, the bylaws don't say that. So he opened it to all public workers. But then O'Brien Trotman, he used to be on the board as well. And, after 76, he became a parliamentary secretary and then a minister in Tom Adams' government. So Ralph Boyce convinced him to go to Tom Adams and say, well, look, give the credit unions some incentive. And that is where you start getting your savings in the credit unions up to a certain amount tax-free. And when that happened, credit unions took off. Young professionals, COB, Light and Power, a whole lot of people then start forming credit unions because they saw the advantage of
Caswell, stick a pin there. I have to correct you. COB was formed before that incentive was given, and several others. So I can't let
They
you do
start. They
that.
start. They start to grow. No, the
No,
incentive only.
but no, they were they existed before
The
that
incentive
that
came
was
in
given.
'82 or something like that.
No, it was that they were it was formed before them, because I can't
Yeah.
let the hard work of the fellas,
Right.
thing. But
But yeah, I will talk
that
about
came
COB as
after.
well, right? And a lot of credit unions then start to take off. As a matter of fact, public workers start growing at such an exponential rate because then you were getting savings. One time you were getting a few $100s a month, then you start getting a few thousand, and within weeks you were getting several thousand. Then you're getting almost $1 million at the end of the month. Every month, the credit union just took off because of those incentives, and the credit union went through a lot of unplanned growth, and we then had to do some catching up, right? But what happened in those days? Every time you joined the credit union, they provided training to teach you what a credit union was all about. They had training sessions where each person who joined would be invited to a meeting, and they would be allowed to participate. They explain what a credit union is, because the credit union is not a bank. It is it's more like a brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever they call it, and it is people each taking care of each other. Because of the growth, we would have some people who want to get in, and that is what you have to do. You have to make sure you get the right people. We've had elections in the credit unions move from a system of voting on the floor for the people who you want, but you voted on the floor for people who participated. You would have had, and I remember a particular credit union, a person who aspired to political office. He eventually got it, but he came to the meeting, first meeting he ever attended, and got elected to the board. Knew nothing about credit unions, but because he went and he had his politics with him, and the people voted for him like they were voting for his party, and his party was very popular at the time. And he came in, and that's what we must avoid, because the credit union is not about politics, it's not about religion, it's not about anything. It is you. One of the things that we do is to make sure credit unions stay away from those two topics, politics and religion. And what we do, we work as volunteers initially. And matter of fact, the boards are still supposed to be voluntary people, and we work for the best interest of our brothers and sisters, not for the motto should be not for profit but for service, and that is why we gave the banks a run for their money, because we were doing things like, for instance, we were giving interest rates at 1% per month on the reducing balance. The
low.
banks didn't want to do that, but we were not out for making profit. We were out for developing our people.
But
and we cannot stray away from that.
Caswell, just before I bring Maxine on, I helped and I was a part. Maxine, you may have heard of it, of the Family Cooperative Credit Union that started at the People's Cathedral.
Yes.
Holmes Williams started that as a part of a vision he had. When the church first started in the Book of Acts, they brought all their possessions and laid them at the apostles' feet. And so he was looking for a way to be able to help some of the people in the church that were going through a tremendous financial difficulty. And we established our credit union, where people could get loans for vacation, they could get loans for turkeys and so on, for Christmas and so on. And as a matter of fact, we started a buying club. And he asked me to leave the job I had at the time, which was with Alamac Trading, where I was being paid very, very well because I was doing very well from a sales executive's position. And I went to work then at the cathedral with the buying club, which was the kind of little mini mart of the Family Co-op Credit Union at the cathedral. And it was really very low interest loans, and you didn't go through the same demands in terms of qualifications that you would have to have gone through with the regular financial institutions. But you began to share some things before Caswell came in, and you unfortunately lost your microphone when you I know it's not the prayer you prayed. It would have to be the enemy who was trying to interfere.
Caswell,
All right,
Caswell,
it would have to be
it was probably my niece's husband who called me and knocked me off. So I will deal with him later on. But I think I just want to continue where
that.
Caswell started, because I think it is important, and a couple of things that we need to understand. A credit union is a cooperative. It operates on the basis of pooling our resources. It is a financial institution, but it is member owned. And there's an essential difference between an organization that is member owned and an organization like a commercial bank where you have shareholders doing business with customers. And at the end of the day, the business with the customer is a means to an end, that is to pay dividends to the owners. Now, I remember when some years ago in my credit union, I noticed that some of the newer volunteers, because that's how we describe the boards, the supervisory committee, the credit committee, are supposed to be volunteers. In recent years, given developments, so people got stipends, now they get fees or whatever. But the credit union, and I noticed that they did something. As I say, I started with the prayer because that's how we begin our meetings, and as I said, it's almost universal. The second thing is that if you pick up the average annual report for any credit union around the Caribbean, in Barbados, and I would hazard a guess globally, you will see set out very early in that report something called credit union operating principles. There's certain fundamentals, and quickly they said democratic structure, open and voluntary membership, democratic control, which means one member, one vote, non-discrimination in relation to race, nationality, politics, religion, etc. As Caswell said, he and I would have had many discussions about politics 35 years ago coming forward. When we got into the business of the credit union, we finished talking politics till the meeting ended, and then we will go and have our political dialogue and so on. That's an important thing to recognize, because in recent years, I've seen some things play out in terms of efforts to influence who gets elected and so on. And I'll come back to that. The other thing is that a critical one is what is called service to members. And you mentioned the difference between the interest rates charged by a commercial bank. And in terms, Judith has here interest rates on loans at 1%, is 1% per month. Caswell spoke about that per month on the reducing balance. Let me focus on the reducing balance first. Before credit unions really got into doing that, the way you apply for a loan, let's say at a commercial bank, they would tell you the interest rate is X%, and that is fixed. If, for example, you were working at a company that gave you a bonus, or your grandmother died and left you some money, and you decided, I'm going to pay off my loan, and you had a loan with a fixed interest rate, if you paid off early, it made no difference. You would still have to pay the financial institution the 10% per annum or whatever the rate was. Yes, it was fixed. Yes. The good thing about the way that the credit union did to facilitate members was to say, look, you should perhaps be given, I even call it an incentive, or at least there should be some benefit to you if you find yourself paying this loan early rather than being penalized, because in the other situation you would be penalized. Right, so they said, okay, on the reducing balance. So let's say you had a loan for $5,000, you're paying it back at $500 a month, but at the end of December you got a bonus, and you said, you know what, instead of continuing with this, I have an outstanding balance of $3,000. I'm going to pay $2,000 out of my bonus and bring it down, which means that your interest is reduced. And that is done because the principle of service to members is that you should get the benefits as a member up front. Similarly, if that's the cost of a loan, interest rates that are paid on savings should also reflect the fact that you are giving members a better rate because they are members. So in other words, the benefits accrue to you. they talk about building stability, because what you're looking to do is ensure that you have an organization that is strong and your practices will reflect that. A critical, because then you had what you call democratic structure, and then you had social goals. Caswell has touched on this, and that a critical part of that is ongoing education. Credit unions over the years, when Caswell and I were younger, I don't have as much gray hair as Caswell, but Caswell, you see some right there.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're getting there.
it is there, and this is, as I said before, this is natural. And to the person who said 41, I don't remember being 41 years. That's a long time ago. I said I was a member of the credit union almost 41 years. My credit
I
union
think that's what
started
they meant.
in 1983, and I was not a baby when I joined. Um, but
Dear.
education was a critical part, and I want to stress education not only for members, but for the officers, those people who volunteer. And in recent times, I would hope that the credit unions, because we are now the two largest credit unions, dominate in terms of membership, in terms of assets, liabilities, they are large. I would hope that they are investing in educating staff, because a lot of credit unions now basically have paid staff. Some may be small, some are large, some have branches, and so pay. But what is missing, I believe, because as I said, I've been around a long time, and I don't necessarily follow everything day to day. I have the reports, etc., that we can read, but I hope that there's education on the philosophy and principles of credit unions and cooperatives, because if we lose that, we lose sight of why we exist. And I think that is something Caswell speaks to. So when we get caught up in hiring persons from other financial institutions and do not ensure that those people understand that they are not coming to, I have no difficulty with bringing people from other institutions. And let me say that, but if they do not understand the fundamental difference in the specific objectives of the movement, then that is problematic, because the way you deal with members and so on. And I want to say this quickly, because I know that the time, Caswell's time, will soon, and we will share this, but I'll say this and stop, and Caswell can continue. There's also this whole issue of cooperation among cooperatives. Credit unions in Barbados in the 80s, several of them were formed. City of Bridgetown, Barbados Workers Union, etc. And I can tell you that in the 80s, when the young people who started City of Bridgetown wanted to understand how best to do the things that they had to do, they went to City of Kingston in Jamaica. They went to Eastern Credit Union in Trinidad. They got involved in the regional movement. They got involved with the world movement, because it is cooperation among cooperatives is a fundamental principle. And so those things have happened. Now, you would have heard Caswell speak about regulation. And I want to say to people, because, and I was going to say this when I got knocked off, because last night, and Caswell responded to the individual, I forgot his name now, who was asking whether he should take out his money. My life savings are in COB. And I started working at 18 years old. And I can give away my age by saying that I worked, that's about 50 years ago. So my life savings are in my credit union, and I am concerned about that. And certainly when we sit here to discuss our concerns, to educate Barbadians about the movement, we have a serious stake in these credit unions. And I want people to understand that. And it is because we do that we take the time to address any concerns that we have. And so I think basically that is one of the issues. Now, I have some concerns in terms of the regulators, because the regulators themselves also need to understand the fundamental principles that inform the movement, because at the end of the day, I will tell you this. I'm looking at CD's comment. Nothing wrong with bringing staff from banks, but they must conform to customs and practice, and not. And that is correct. And I want to say that when we this whole thing of applying technological solutions, credit unions in Barbados some years ago were ahead of some of the commercial banks, because what people need to understand is that before the Financial Services Commission, and still, credit unions operate under the Cooperative Societies Act, just like any financial institution. So they were regulated under that. As credit unions got larger, they were brought under the umbrella of scrutiny by the central bank. And with the creation of the Financial Services Commission, they were involved there. My big concern, and I will flag this and I will come back to it because I don't have time tonight to discuss it, but I would ask somebody from the FSC if they want to come on the show and dialogue with me. That is fine. We have to be careful that we do not go and borrow things from overseas, as Bajans would say, from over in a way, and bring it here and impose it. In the last couple of years, I was preoccupied with other things, and I certainly, in fact, I didn't hear any public discussion about it. But I went to the annual general meeting of the credit union, and I now belong to more than one credit union, because you can do that. And I did that because I have to spread my risk as I would, and commercial banks are not doing much for me. So as I said, the bulk of what I own is in the credit union movement. But in that meeting, the issue of independent directors came up. And I asked the question, before I started to read about it, because I can multitask, I sat in the meeting with my tablet and I started to scrutinize this thing. And when I looked at what was defined, to me, I will put it simply like this, and I will, as I said, I will raise it and I will flag it and come back to it. The concept of an independent director as defined by the Financial Services Commission does not make sense. And I would say it is almost impossible to achieve. In other words, my question is, what is your objective for introducing it? What was wrong with the process before? How do you find these so-called independent persons? Now, I know as a former director of several corporate entities in Barbados, including one of the largest conglomerates, locally owned companies, I was a non-executive director, and people would consider that independent in the sense that I was not an employee of the group of companies. So I came into that directorship with what they would probably see as a position of distance from the day-to-day operations, because I was not involved in that, so I could look at it in a certain way. But when they start to define these things, and I asked myself, where are we going to find these people who are truly independent? Because when I started to apply all the definitions, it started to eliminate almost everybody. Because remember, I talk about cooperation among cooperatives, and credit unions belong to an umbrella body where they sometimes make decisions together, etc. So I want to say, in terms of my opening comments, that the credit union movement in Barbados has grown significantly. And I stopped Caswell very quickly when he mentioned the cause for growth. I would say that came at a time, those incentives came at a time when because the formation, at a time when people got into the movement who otherwise could not. There's a fundamental element of credit unions, and that is something called a common bond. So, for example, when Caswell mentioned that the Barbados Workers Union, I'm not Barbados Workers, but the Public Workers Credit Union, initially people saw it as relating to a particular union, and they widened it to public servants. Public servants across the public sector would have constituted a common bond. When the city of Bridgetown was formed, for example, the young people who started that, and I remember it exactly because it was 1983. It was the year after I started teaching at KFL. I went there for one term and ended up spending 17 and a half years, an additional 17 years beyond that term. But it was then in that first year that I spent at KFL that some people who happened, some of them happened to be students of mine in my very first classes, came together and said, look, we cannot join any of the existing credit unions. Let us form a credit union. And the common bond then was people who worked in and around the city. Now, because Barbados is small, working in or around the city could encompass a wide cross section of Barbadians. And so you had that credit union form. Now, that common bond creates, the basis on which your members come together, etc. So people joined the movement because they could not get good service or access to the commercial banks in the same way. And we saw that. And with the incentives, people then were given an extra boost to do so. Now, my last comment is that because our purpose is to provide service to members, as members grow and change. When I joined the credit union, I was a 20-something, in my early 20s. I did not own a house. I did not own a car at the time, and all of those. See, and Snow is telling me that he agrees that the credit union helped me to get those things, and that is true because so what happened, they were able to offer me certain services. Now the question is, as a financial institution, how do we leverage the members that we have in a way that allows the credit union to be able to provide continuous and new and dynamic services to members? Because when I was, as I said, before I had a car, before I had a house, there were certain needs I had. I am now a retiree. I own a car. I own a house, thanks to the credit union helping me do all of those things. How do I know, what do they need? What do I need from them in order to be, the truth is, and I will say this and stop, perhaps my generation may decide, you know what? I want to unburden myself of a house of a certain size because children grow up and go off or whatever the case may be. And or some people may, as they age, need assistance in living situations and whatever. So I am thinking that the credit union as an institution is constrained by the legislation to do certain kinds of things, and that is important. But it has a membership base which can be leveraged to address the ongoing financial and financial first, because it's a financial cooperative, financial needs of its members. Caswell, I said a lot, so you take over.
Yeah, well, just before you jump in, Caswell, Maxine, the information you're sharing is so potent and so important, because a lot of us, especially younger ones, I mean, you were talking about revealing your age, but nobody's going to believe that anyhow, no matter
what. That's all right. That's why I will tell you.
But I was around the as I mentioned, the Family Cooperative Credit Union, which actually evolved, because at the time you had to be a member of the People's Cathedral in order to join the Family Cooperative Credit Union. But then it evolved to incorporate the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies group. And then it evolved further to incorporate, I believe, the Evangelical Association of Barbados. I think they have just merged. I can't remember the name of the credit union, but they've just had a merger with another credit union, I think, to help bolster assets and all these kind of things and that kind of stuff. I am not sure because I was not able to attend that meeting to do with the merger. But I don't know if the credit union that they connected with has the same vision that Dr. Williams had when he formed the Family Cooperative Credit Union, because his was obviously scripturally and spiritually based as the foundation for him taking that action. But one of the things that I realized in being a part of the credit union was, unlike the banks, because right now, and I think you would agree with me, Caswell, right now, I'm not going to call the name of the bank, but I just got interest rate notification from one of my banks of 0.01 cents. Okay. And Scotia Bank, sorry, another bank from Canada, forgive me, another bank, I believe they're located in Canada, on savings. When I walked into the bank, it was up on the wall, interest rate on savings 0.000%. Now, I was just asking my wife to look for our account information from the credit union that we're a part of, and because I have shares, and those shares are worth significantly more than anything I would have got from a bank.
No, no, you
So
see, no, that also touches on the point I'm making. In the current environment, the first of all, the credit union, like a commercial bank, and interestingly, there was a point in my life when I was a director of bank which sat right next door to my credit union. So I was a director of a commercial bank, and I understood the philosophy and operating principles of the bank. And next door, which was still a financial institution, I also understood how we did business as a credit union. And I think the two things allowed me to better appreciate the importance of the credit union staying true to its philosophy. But that whole interest rate story is one of the reasons why I think we are at a phase in the movement where the institution, because remember, the operation of a credit union as an institution is one thing. The facilitation of the members, or the support of the members to leverage their their resources and so on, is another issue. And this is where, for example, I know my brother Caswell is a purist, but I when it comes, because I heard him mention some credit unions having companies. Now, you have to be very careful how these things are done. And that is a discussion that we have, because we should be into wealth creation. And the problem, if you don't do these things well, you might be impoverishing people. But that, so far, I trust, has not happened. There's another issue, Caswell, which you may want to touch on, and I think I heard you mention it last night. Is this whole issue of distribution of the surpluses? And I was happy that you used the word last night, because I remember somebody calling me old school when they were talking about profits, and I said to them, the credit union is not in the business of generating profits. There's a philosophical understanding. I'm not talking about inefficiency, but if you talk about profits, your relationship to your member is different. In other words, in the pursuit of profits, you're going to charge the members as much as you can when they borrow money, and pay as little interest as you can when they save, as an example. On the other hand, if you're saying that our business is about surpluses, you operate as efficiently when it comes to operating costs, and you seek to reduce as low as possible your interest fees or the cost of borrowing, and pay as much as you can in dividends. But that's the basic thing. But over to Caswell, as I said.
I just went into my library, and you see this book here? It says people,
Not profits.
not profit. And it says here, the story of the credit union movement. This is a book published by the Credit Union National Association in the United States. Well, they were instrumental in a lot of the training I had. I went to the training institution they have out there, Kuna Management School. I did a diploma in credit union management, and then I went back and I did fraud investigations to teach me how to be a good crook, so that I can detect people stealing. I can assure you that if I wanted to steal, they taught me so well, I would be able to do it and get away with it. But they had to do that so that, you don't teach everybody, and this give us a lot of training, and all of this was free to me because the members of the credit union paid for it. That is why I still continue to advocate for credit unions, because That is a significant part of my education, right?
Caswell, I was about to, when I saw that comment from It's Me, I was about to say that the archives haven't burnt down. It really just shifted to you.
You know, you'll be surprised, but I have a lot
Ah,
of information. And Maxine might say that I'm a purist, but yeah, you know, I might even admit it because a
No,
lot of
there's
things that
nothing wrong with being a purist.
you know,
We can, we
I
can,
admit
we
it.
can.
Not that I don't think that we should develop and we should stick to the old things all the time and don't change, you know. But there are some things that remain that you don't
Yes.
touch, like honor the
yeah,
father and the
foundation.
mother that doesn't belong in the land and all kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those things were out from when Moses, you know,
Well,
he handed them down. There are
well,
certain things like that that don't care
you
how
don't
long you
touch.
live,
Yeah.
you will
Yeah.
you will be you should think you should certain basic
Foundations.
things that do not change,
Yeah, the
right?
foundations. Yeah.
But we, for instance, over the years in Barbados, we have been trying to be able to give right checks, credit union checks. The banks have put so much pressure on the system to keep credit unions out. Mind you, they will write checks for us, and we can write checks on their stationery, and they have large accounts of credit unions, but they don't want credit unions to have their own checks. In the United States, they had the same lobby, and the credit unions got away with it by saying, "Well, look, these are not checks; these are share drafts. We are giving you a draft on our shares. It looked like a check and everything, except I said at the top of the thing, share draft."
But you know, Caswell, fortunately, technology has taken
Yes.
over. I can sit here in front of me and do a transfer from my credit union
Mm.
to any commercial bank in Barbados. Use, you know, and that is the thing that saved us, because you're correct. They really were objecting strenuously.
Right? They fought tooth and nail because they wanted to keep us small. They wanted to keep us poor. They wanted to keep us um, dependent on them. I remember serving on the supervisory committee and credit committees, and my concept, I served on the board as well. Mostly on supervisory committees. Or I remember, you know, the supervisory committee is basically the auditor of the credit union, the internal auditor. But of course, no, supervisory committees can't do the work on a daily basis because the credit unions have grown so much. So you hire internal auditors, but that is still their responsibility by law. As a matter of fact, as a supervisor, and you fail to report certain things, you can spend some time in jail. You know, so the law takes your function as credit union very seriously. You know, and I was always say to them, I do not bathe in cold water, and so I am not going to jail because I don't think they give you warm water baths at every morning come. So I always believed that I had a sacred trust, and I live up to that. And people might think, oh, that I was just miserable and all kind. You know, but I was following the law. I was exactly what the law wants me to do, and I did it to the best of my ability. But what has happened, as I was telling you, the banks try to keep us down, and we have to be fighting with them. You know, like we they want us to piggyback on them so that they can get fees from us. You know, and like for instance, even though um like you might have a business and you want to be able to write checks, and you got all your money credit, you know, you got to put some in the bank so that you can write checks in the bank because they will not the system will not allow the credit. You know, and that's an easy thing because the legislation is simple. It says that the central bank can approve it, but the central bank wouldn't approve it. If the registrar of cooperatives and the does know the FSC gives permission, the central bank still has to approve. And that is the stumbling block that we always come. So people always try to make sure credit unions were poor cousins rather than major players. They didn't want that. And we have been struggling for years to take our rightful place. Because let me do something, see? And I'm not trying to be racist, but credit unions in Barbados are largely Black people. And you know how they say, oh, black people can't run business. That's what they say, you know. And we have proven that that is not true. That we are capable or even better than anybody else. And because black people started Public Workers Credit Union, they started City of Bridgetown Credit Union. I know most of the people who started COB. But I don't know the people. I know some of the people who started Public Workers because that was a bit before my time. Because they started, as I said, back in 1968, and then they registered as credit in 1970. And 78 was now heading to Combamere. But I get to work with those people like Ralph Boyce. I was talking about him earlier. You know, Ralph, Olive Trotman. The credit union built them in the first build a building on Belmont Road. They call it Olive Trotman House because Olive was always they're always fighting. Then there's a little suit. If you go in there, you will see a little suitcase, a little valise. Suitcase what? A little valise. That's where Olive's going to collect the money. You know, and every year Olive was reelected to the credit committee. She won't serve anywhere else. And that was very important. I remember serving with Olive on the committees, and she would say, people recommend, no, this person shouldn't get a loan. I would say, no. She's plant kitchen garden. She got pigs and all kind of stuff. And you see, because it's about knowing your members. We were talking about knowing our members long before this was a buzz thing in the financial sector in Barbados, you know. That is why we give what they call character loans, because we know people and we know that people can pay back. So we had a system where you didn't have to have security for loans at a certain level because we trusted you, we knew you, and we know that you can pay. Character loans. That is all. That's how the credit unions developed, because a lot of people in Barbados didn't have the collateral, but they were honest. And I can assure you that I have helped people establish businesses, get properties, and stuff. And don't want to boast now, but Golden Edwards and myself were the people who proposed a mortgage program for Public Workers Credit Union. And we started there. Now they have hundreds of mortgages, thousands even, you know, for that very small start and from meeting up in UPW headquarters. So the credit union was all about people helping people. This is what it's all about, and not be trying to be rich. Credit unions are not supposed to be rich. Credit unions help its members to become rich, and that is what it's all about. I remember when Owen Arthur wanted to offer us the credit union shares because, you know, they saw a set of money and they want to get their hands on it because, like this current government now too, every time they see money before, people want to get there. And I wrote to him. I said, but the law does not allow credit unions to buy shares. You're going to change the law. You know, but we can give loans to our members to buy those shares. We will make our members rich, because the idea is not for a credit union now to be owning a whole set of properties and monies and all kind of stuff. No, you're supposed to develop your membership, but you can only do that with training. And you have to train the people who come in. As I tell you, look, when I first joined the credit union, within weeks of joining, I was in a class, sitting down and learning about credit unions. And then I, of course, know me, I go to meetings. The first meeting that I was ever invited, I went. And they start talking too. I don't know, because what had happened is I hear people talking about point of order, all this kind of thing. I hear a boy talking about a little boy, just left school. And people, and they were very parliamentary, more parliamentarian in the House of Assembly. And this, so I said, excuse me, hold on, I just want to say something. I said, I don't understand what they're saying. You know, because when I expect young people come here and when they talk all this kind of thing, I lost. Ralph Boyce looked at me and he said, okay, I can help you. So every time somebody got up on a point, he explained it to me. I thought he was trying to ridicule me, but he gave me the impetus to study more and get further. I'm one of the few people in Barbados who got a certificate in parliamentary procedure, because that is where the credit union sent me. Right? myself, Keith, I would know a few other people, we went and we did a thing. They don't offer it anymore. But it was about training, and they explained, and I got up and I start talking at the first meeting. I didn't understand. I don't sit on the bench and people talking about my head. I said, look, so stop by here. You want to understand what's going on? First meeting. And I have not been, I'm not sorry for that intervention. I tell Ralph, boys, he helped train me. And he, along with those pioneers, I remember Ralph was the president at the time, then Carl Trotman. And you know, Carl Trotman never got past a senior clerk in the public service. But he was a Trojan in the credit union movement. You couldn't beat him. And I think he suffered as a result of being in the credit union and the NUPW, because, you know, people who were like that, the politicians either buy you or keep you down. Well, they couldn't buy him, and so they kept him down. But we had a lot of people who fought for workers in both unions, credit union and workers unions, and they were all together. The credit union took off, as I said. I think the tax incentives came in 1979, you know, Maxine. Yeah, it's 79. You know, I'm checking back. But that caused the credit unions to grow, and the growth then attracted people who wouldn't want to have anything to do with credit unions before. And as a result, now, Maxine says she don't mind people coming to the banks. I don't mind anybody coming from the banks or IMF or wherever they come from, but they must be steeped in credit unions first, because they bring their bad practices from the banks and bring them into the credit unions and change the system. I know a lot of credit unions are starting to look bankish, and that is destroying what the Rochdale pioneers is all about. It was about people helping people. Right now, you go and say, I want any credit union, and you don't ever go back to the credit union meeting. You know, for a credit union that has 10,000 members, you know, when the AGM comes, the place should be full. But you don't get that. Some days you don't get a quorum. Maxine, you're muted. I'm not hearing you, Maxine.
Yeah, I was saying that perhaps we need to address the issue of commercial credit unions depositing funds in commercial banks. And what I would say, so if you want to go first, but it is part of the cash management of credit union. And in fact, at some point, I was trying to find if it was still at some point in the legislation. Remember, credit unions were required, Caswell, you remember?
Yes.
To hold money in, it would have been the National Bank, it was?
It was at one stage before the current legislation that we have now. Mm-hmm. The credit unions could have only gone with the government savings bank, mm-hmm. and then that became the National Bank, and then Republic Bank. Right. But after this legislation was passed in 1990, but came into force in 93, they allowed you to deposit in, I can read the section for you. The funds of a society, including the reserve, may be deposited in a bank registered under the Financial Institutions Act. 2, a society registered under this act be invested in government security issued by the government of Barbados. 2, securities, the payment of interest of which is guaranteed by the government of Barbados. Because you see, we try not to get too extravagant and go out there and
taking risk.
Take risks.
Excess risk, yeah.
Right. And 3, subject to subsection 2, securities issued in Barbados by a company incorporated in Barbados and listed by the Barbados Stock Exchange if the company has paid a dividend on its shares for the preceding 5 consecutive years. So you see, they were making sure that you don't take risk, excess risk with the people's money, right? and there have been moves afoot by, and I tell you mostly this Barbados Labour Party, to get their hands on credit union money. Every time that they say the credit union got money, but they don't understand. And let me explain to the people of this country. Credit unions don't have a lot of money. When you heard the credit union have assets of nearly $1 billion, those are loans. You took
The
money from me
liabilities
and
are
left it to
people's
Maxine.
savings.
Yeah, you know. So when you you got all these assets, the assets are really out there and building a house in Maxine, buying a car for me, sending school for these children. That's where the money is. It is not there sitting on waiting for somebody to come and rob the credit union.
And Caswell, I think that's an important point you're making in relation to the question about depositing money. As I say, it is about cash management. That at the end of the day, credit unions take in deposits and they lend out those deposits to the members. Now, in any situation, the two things will not be equal. And so at some point you will have excess cash. Let me put it that way. But as Caswell pointed out, credit unions are significantly loaned out in terms of the monies that they receive in deposits, etc. Now, my concern is given what commercial, especially now where commercial bank rates are so low, for credit unions to have to hold significant amounts of money in banks is counterproductive. And so the question is, how do you manage that? Now, of course, we have to remember that with the debt restructuring situation that we faced recently, credit unions got burnt to the tune of about $30-something million in interest loss. Let me put it that way. So my question is, how do you best safeguard the interests of members as you manage the funds that have been put in your charge as a credit union? Because we have a fiduciary responsibility, so
I want to
the
ask
person
a
is
question.
asked if you pay a fee. No, if the rates are calculated on the declining balance, right, Caswell, in credit
On the
union,
declining
certainly in my
balance.
credit union, and I explained that. So
And
mortgage is a long-term loan.
Yeah,
so
but that is still on the reducing balance.
Yeah,
Mortgage
let me
is
ask
also
a quick question. Let me ask a quick question here of you, Caswell. And maybe it was something you were beginning. I thought you were beginning to go into it just now, Maxine. It has to do. You mentioned something about excess cash just now. In other words, if my understanding is correct, if you want to call it the assets, the cash or the monies that the credit union has, is available for the members to get loans to do different things, buy homes, buy cars, so forth. Now, in the event that they have excess, are they able to invest that excess in any area, whether it be real estate, stock exchange, or
not
whatever?
just
no real estate.
Uh,
You're limited to 6% of your stated assets in real estate. You can't go above that, except if you have properties like mortgage and people didn't pay, and you have to foreclose on that mortgage, then you might have more than the 6%.
Right.
no.
Just let me finish your question a sec, though, because what I wanted to ask was if it is invested, will that build the share value for the members? In other words, will the members receive the returns on what that investment is as a part of their shares?
Yeah, the value.
Yeah, because that is what the credit is all about. When you at the end of the year, when you have your AGM, they would say, well, this is what the surplus is. The members are supposed to vote on the distribution of that money, and it's supposed to go to people who do business with the credit union, the members who do business with the credit union. It's supposed to be interest on dividends on your shares, and then of course we have social outreach where we where we assist the community. We have training, and I remember when I was on the board and some credit unions. I served on more than one credit union. we've contributed to the training by the league. So the league would provide training for all credit unions because it is easy, it is cheaper to have a credit union once train 5 people or 10 people when you could pull that money in the league and you can train 500. You know what I mean? Over time. And they taught credit union subjects, things that would help you to develop the credit union.
Caswell, can I say something about real estate when you're done that point?
The real estate, however, if you foreclose on the thing, the law only allow you to hold that property for 5 years. No. But you can get an extension from the Financial Service Commission if circumstances merit it.
All right, I want to say, okay, Pastor Ferdinand, you want to say something, but
I'm just trying to throw questions in that I'm observing coming up and some in my own mind. I saw a comment there made just now. I think you always see it on the screen there about Cyprus and credit unions depositing money and so on.
To that.
Just before you do that, Maxine, you remember some years ago, I'm trying to remember the bank that was on Broad Street that collapsed, the Barbados something. What was that bank again?
Credit and Commerce or something like that.
Something like that. And then, of course, we saw the collapse of banks in the United States. What is there a safeguard in Barbados in terms of the financial sector that helps to preserve and protect the deposits of the credit unions in the banks?
All right, I am not. Have we gotten deposit insurance? I know credit unions have set some system, but the commercial banks had gotten some. But let me speak to this before. First of all, I would want to say to Hurricane Writer that credit unions, in terms of the total amount of cash or monies that come into the system, deposits, etc., you have to look and see what percentage of that ends up, let's say, in a bank. And typically they wouldn't put it in a single bank. In the past, the legislation restricted you to a bank, but that has changed somewhat. Now, this is one of the reasons why I keep talking about leveraging membership and so on. Now, Caswell mentioned real estate and the law restricting you. The question, therefore, that I pose in terms of the strict adherence to that, let's say that a credit union operates, the two big credit unions operate two things. One, they have large operations. Do they invest in that and own it, or do they go and pay rent to somebody? Now, if you pay rent to somebody, there is enough, that money dies, put it that way. However, if you invest in real estate, it is owned by the members, because the members own the credit union. So there's value to that. So I mean, and I saw a parallel is, I'll use this government. Governments go overseas and have to set up embassies, etc. And in the case of the Barbados government, over several decades, a decision would have been taken whether you go and pay rent to a landlord in London or New York, or do you purchase. You understand? Yeah. And part of what was done, it would have been purchased by national insurance, so it became an investment. Now, if you restrict the amount held, you may end up. So what the credit union can do, and what some credit unions have done, is to create an entity where, because of that 6% restriction or whatever it was, you then have an entity that is owned by the members of the credit union, and the properties may be owned by them, and so on, so that the transaction stays in the family. Now, those things have to be properly declared, identified, and so on, because my difficulty with restricting the ownership of real estate, especially where this real estate is not just real estate out there, but real estate that is critical to the operation. And if you think, let's look at Bridgetown. Both large credit unions operate on Broad Street. Rental rates on Broad Street, as you can imagine, would be extremely high.
Yeah.
And therefore, if they had to pay for their presence, if they had to rent property to operate there, that is money that does. I mean, I use myself as an example. I told people that when I look back and saw the amount of years that I rented an apartment as opposed to buying probably a small house and then changing it to a large one or whatever, that money was dead. So I think these are the kind of discussions that we have to look at and ask, what is the ideal kind of situation? Because if we
Yeah,
stick to that, the figure, and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just responding to that 6%, there are pros and cons. Um,
Right. That question that's on the
Now the
screen
question
there,
of investment,
yeah,
the
that
law,
one,
as again, the law specifies a procedure, and
right.
Caswell can for what they say. There's certain things you can invest in, and other things. First, you have to go to the members for them to approve. Having gotten the approval in members, you go to the regulator. So a board or a CEO and board cannot sit down and say, we should not sit down and say we want to do this, because I can't speak for every institution, but I can tell you what the rule provides for. So that, let's say that in the current climate, the savings rates that you get, let's say if you put money in a commercial bank or some other institution which takes fixed deposits, is paying very little. The credit union then asks itself, what do we do with this money? And somebody said, well, you can probably invest in X or Y. Now they would have to go and make a case to the membership at a general meeting, where the members would listen, analyze for themselves, and say yea or nay. Now, if the majority say yes, that then has to go, as I said, to the regulators. Before it was the
Right.
cooperative department, now it is the FSC. And they will then say, we will give you permission according to what the rules say, and the risk profile and all kinds of things. They will
Hmm.
do that analysis. So nobody can get it on there and decide that
And just decide to do with
no,
the
no,
excess. Yeah,
No,
I wish
no.
no,
we
they
had
can't.
more. I
They
wish we
just,
had more time though on this,
Mhm,
Caswell and Maxine. And I think we're trying to arrange a show that
mhm.
will the entire show will focus on this, because it is such an involving subject, and it's very expansive from what I'm hearing. I mean, the questions that I'm seeing coming up, and in terms of in terms of
Caswell, we have a
the
visitor.
yeah. Yeah, in
Nice.
terms of the
you
excess
know, she get the
catches
goodie
and
from the grandmother's side, right?
definitely,
Oh, yeah.
definitely, in terms of the excesses and the different policy positions and so on, I think it would be really, really critical that we just have a show on this,
Yes, it
because
is.
we do want to move into the next segment with Rose, relative to education matters, which is equally, and I am just amazed, Maxine, Caswell, Rose, at how many issues we are having to deal with on this show. It's like every day
Barbadians are
you wake up.
fortunate. They are being
Yes,
educated on so many fronts, and
I
I
am,
hear it
I
all
am
the
telling
time.
you, I'm telling you, I mean, there's so many things happening that sometimes you can hardly wrap your head around it, anything at all. The moment we finish with one thing, it's another and another and another. And it all has to do with accountability and transparency. So, Rose, we welcome you tonight. Really, it's a pleasure to have you. I know you're going to educate us. I mean, the subject is education matters. So I know we are going to be educated tonight. And I know, Maxine and Caswell, that Marcy is going to be working on a show to deal further with the credit union, because I really believe it's a critically important aspect of Barbadian life, period. So I know she'll be doing that. But Rose, so good to have you. Nice to have
Thank
you with
you.
us tonight.
Welcome.
Myself and Caswell, are now equitable in terms of two ladies to two gentlemen, and I'm sure you all will quite capably handle the both of us. So welcome tonight. God bless you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And it was really an educational process. And it made me reflect and say, this is what education is all about. Um, Debunking myths, demystifying things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I subscribe to the pedagogy of the oppressed, Maxine. and where it talks about demystifying learning, demystifying education, demystifying knowledge. And that's what you, Caswell and Maxine, have been doing so eloquently and passionately, and taking ownership of what concerns you, taking ownership of your experiences, and bringing along others too who might not be as informed. And that is why I like what we do on this platform. We learn from each other, we give way to each other, and we try to transfer or transmit that knowledge in a way that others can understand and be similarly motivated as we are. So I thank you very much for the educational process on credit unions, and more to follow from you and Caswell and Pastor Ferdy, the focus that you brought to it by asking the questions for those who may not be able to do so. So I thank you for this opportunity to be with you. And I want to say good evening, loyal sons and daughters, all firm craftsmen of our faith. And Pastor Ferdy, you said something, pardon me, that is like, as soon as before you finish one thing, something else appears or jumps out at you. And
Mhm.
this has been my concern recently. Like, the Barbadian public seems to be playing catch up, or not in the game at all.
I think
Not
that
in the
one. I
game
think
at
that
all.
one. Yeah.
you know? So that is what I'm looking at this evening. Education matters. Matters in terms of a verb, and matters in terms of the issues and concerns. So I'm looking at it from two dimensions: the matters, which are the issues and the concerns that should bother us or cause us to sit up and take note. So I've sent off some thank you for the welcome. I have sent off some PowerPoints to Dave to keep us focused and given the time frame. And as I said, my topic is education matters. I've not been able to speak on education directly for a while because we were taken up with crime, violence, and other issues, though related, not specifically on education. So we're looking at issues related to education and the things that we should be concerned about. Next slide, please, Dave. Thank you so much, Dave, for assisting. Next slide, please. Now, as you know, that's what I like about us, that we bring our information, and if we don't, we appeal to those in the chat to assist. Now, I am prefacing this session on this: what UNESCO says about education for all. Education is the basic building block of every society. We agree with that. Education, it is the single best investment countries can make to build prosperous, healthy, and equitable societies. We take on that. Article 26 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has the right to education. I deliberately posted these because it seems in recent times that we owe education to this current administration. It's a new phenomenon. It would they would seem to put on us, it's new. But these have been the hallmarks of UNESCO, which is the UN arm on education, science, and culture. Next slide, please. Education is not only a right according to UNESCO, but it's a passport to human development that opens doors and expands opportunities and freedom. We here, please, Dave.
You mean to see if we can get it a little larger, a little bigger?
No, not that one. Not
Oh,
that. Oh, no. Yes,
okay, okay,
I
right.
can read. So when we hear our um, MPs, our Prime Minister, Minister of Education, our Chief Education Officer pontificating and speaking on these matters, they just cut and pasting more or less what is out there. It's not new, but how they are doing it should raise concerns. And according to UNESCO, the Sustainable Development Goal 4 speaks to ensuring inclusive, equitable, and quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning. That is why, too, we saw the rush with education reform, the reform process that was proposed um, to ensure that we could tell, as I said back then, we could say to you, and look, we have attained that development goal. There are some, I find no fault with that goal. However, as I said back then, we have to critique what is meant by inclusive, and that when UNESCO spoke of inclusive, it first intended to include those with special needs, but now it is widened. It has widened and broadened to include those with gender, sexuality, etc. Okay. Um, the next one, please. I pulled this together. I spent the best part of today reading. It was as if I were doing a thesis, and could not stop myself. I had to pull in and haul in myself. So what I'm going to read to you now is summary of various positions um, internationally on governments, not only our Barbados government, but governments generally and universally. Um, Good governance would include in, in their education, if in education, the following. The role basically is that of ensuring that everyone has access and opportunities to quality education from early childhood to primary to secondary to tertiary and university. And that happens here. I want to say that again, it did not, the alpha and omega of education, Pastor Ferdy. It's not, um, does not reside, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, they don't reside with this government, it existed. And if we go right back, remember how I would trace right back to pre-emancipation. But definitely, let us look at post pre-independence 1966, immediately prior, if I could put those two, to independence 1966, and what the newly independent government of Barbados sought to do. Their focus was on making education um, accessible and opportunities available. And
Rose, can I interrupt you for just one moment? The reason
yes,
I'm doing
please.
that is because the area you're dealing with right now. I read a comment earlier this week by Dr. Let me be sure I get the name right, by Professor Emeritus Sir Henry Fraser. I don't know if you saw
Oh yes,
this
yes.
article he wrote,
Yes. And
and
I
and
would want to comment on that sometime.
okay, here he talks about a failure of between 30 to 50% of 11-year-olds in the common entrance exam for decades, having been ignored by successive ministries of education and little being done. I don't know if that would be incorporated in the sense of his comments here, in within the context of what you're sharing in this particular point that you're making.
That what we have to look more closely at how education is done, how teaching and learning is done.
Hmm.
And I said teaching and learning as a singular um, noun.
Hmm.
Um, what liked about the article is that Professor Sir Henry Fraser talked about being literate and numerate.
Yes.
And the thrust now is on financial literacy and not on being numerate. And financial literacy has a different philosophy underpinning it, as opposed to teaching our children to read, write, and compute.
Hmm. Hmm.
And underpinning all of that, the buzzwords about critical thinking and reasoning and comprehension. As far as I know, without anybody identifying those things were the underpinnings of how we were taught, and how I taught. So there is we have to clearly look at what is happening in the classroom, and how I'm not blaming teachers. I am not blaming teachers. I am seeing how the expectations placed on teachers, and the new um one of the questions I found myself asking myself is, who is controlling education now, and for what reason? And how is it um the policies or the expectations or the programs, how are they being brought into the curriculum, into the syllabus, which in a sense does not allow for the development of although it purports to be doing that. I am not, and others, as Sir Fraser, Sir Henry wrote, others are not seeing it. So we have to stick a pin and see what we are not doing, what we are doing, and what
What we
we
can do
should be
better.
doing. Make sense, Pastor Ferdy?
Yeah, and what we can do better as well, Rose, when I think our educational system should be preparing our children for the future. I mean, because, their job requirements and their opportunities are not going to be the same that you and I had. And so, is our educational system preparing from a primary school all the way up through to secondary school? Because one of the things Sir Henry Fraser spoke about was the semi-literate and semi-numerate consequences
Yes.
of a lot of these children progressing to secondary school and then ending up with no real certification or skills and ending up on the block.
And we
So,
could not, we cannot submerge what needs the critical elements in things like IT and robotics. We still
yes.
have to make sure the basics are attended to.
Yeah, yeah. When I was in school, we did arithmetic. I learned my two times, three times, four times table, and then as I graduated, I came into something called. You remember the mathematics? I don't know if Caswell, if I don't know if it was in school at your day, but we had this 1 0 0 1 0 0 0, which we began to discover after we
Binary.
left binary, that it was computer language. I didn't know then. Otherwise, I'd have probably paid a lot more attention to it in school. But I didn't know it was
Yes.
anything to do with computers.
The thing is that there is education, in a sense, was mystified. What is happening now, it is becoming so liberating and so liberated that we need to strike the balance. It was so with the access to current information, education should be more exciting and giving better and greater results. That's why I'm thinking that's another discussion.
Oh yeah. Oh
Here
yeah.
we are looking at government's role. We talked about access to quality education. We talked about providing adequate and appropriate resources such as the infrastructural, the plant and the building, the instructional, that's the teaching and learning, the professional, that's the persons who will deliver, the teachers, the the ancillary staff, the support staff, etc., to enable effective teaching and meaningful learning. Government's role is ensuring protection for students and those on the plan by providing a safe, secure, and healthy environment, again, for effective teaching and meaningful learning. Next slide, please. And somebody said the Springer incident explain who's in control. That was in my head all the time. Who is in control? Um, build and established government's role is to build and establish learning facilities that are aesthetically appealing and retrofitted adequately and appropriately.
May I interrupt you on this one?
Yes, please.
Rose, many years ago, when I worked with the S&T Motors, one of my top clients were people at a particular international institution. And I discovered then that there was European Union funding available for every house in Barbados to be wired for technology and all institutions to be wired for technology. I can't remember if it was a loan or a grant. In other words, when we are building a facility, are we incorporating into that facility all the technological infrastructure that children can come in, plug in a computer, plug in a wireless system or whatever? Of course, we know the mechanisms that are there to help to control and monitor it. But the particular financial institution told me that. The director of that area told me that, and he said he has never been approached by the government with regards to it.
But to remind you of EduTech 2000 at the turn of this century, that's what it was supposed to do. Hence, again, I had spoke in the most ad nauseum manner on this platform about having not done it, how we suffered during COVID when children were expected to continue learning using the technology. So we do borrow, and this is going to come up when I come further into the presentation. We are borrowing, but there's an indebtedness, but we want to see the results of that borrowing. Um, recently, the government had a competition for the best design, modern design school infrastructure there. And one of the things that they and I agree with them, that schools should be more aesthetically appealing, not drab buildings. They should be well appointed and accessible, and the Prime
Agreed.
Minister likes to talk about climate resilient, all the above. But one of the things I heard the Minister of Education elaborating on is that with these new retrofitted, aesthetically appealing, designed schools, etc., they're talking about collaborative learning and teamwork. So they're bringing in the buzzwords. But I want to know that meaningful learning occurs. Teamwork, collaborative teaching, learning, it has its place. It has its place. And I kept saying, where is it coming from? Because I remember um, in the infant schools where I taught infants. At one point, we had nestling tables where the children sat around, and we taught them to collaborate, and we taught them to share, etc. It's not new.
That's right.
It's not new. We should just build on those things that happened. So I do laud the government, I do laud the administration for looking at having schools being more aesthetically appointed and retrofitted. Um, Governments also should guide the curricula which reflect national development goals. I put that in very expanded of what I saw in the various texts. And I deliberately included not based on manifesto promises. And that's what we're getting. Manifesto promises that are supposed to either reflect the national development goals, but somewhere in there, they all are manifesto promises. So a manifesto promise is to do away with the common entrance exam. A manifesto promise is to introduce education reform. A manifesto promise is to establish these colleges or centers of excellence. Do these things reflect national development goals? When you put all of these suggestions or all of these programs, Do they line up with the national development goals? Or are you seeking to satisfy self, political aspirations, as well as external entities on whom you are relying for funding and assistance? That is what I'm concerned about. The curricula that seems to be uh, hither and yon, you know, and I want to see it coming together. What are the philosophies? So we're hearing a world class citizen. We are hearing, and that's what the EduTech 2000 was supposed to do: produce world class citizens. Um, get her people prepared for the digital world. Um, Citizens of Barbados, all of those things. What are the national development goals? That will stop us from borrowing, and being mendicant as a society and leaving people behind. Here we go. Let me get back to my slide. The role of education is that of establishing legislation and standards. We do need legislation, but again, that legislation must not be foisted on persons, as we saw with the cybercrime bill and the child protection act. It must reflect the needs of the present generation, and into the future. It must be sound and not done hastily. Any legislation that guides education. What are we have another slide on that, please?
I did see something, Rose, concerning government imposing some matters. I can't recall what it was on private schools. I saw. I
Yes.
don't know if you saw that article. I can't
Oh,
remember
yes.
the details of it, but it
And
sounded so
that's what made
draconian.
me ask who's controlling education.
Yeah, and the fact that you make the comment here, guide curriculum and not dictate curriculum, to me, what seems to be the government's current modus operandi is to say this is what it is, you have to comply, and there seems to be a lack of dialogue and engagement with the stakeholders as it relates to this. I mean, teachers such as yourself, persons who have come up through the educational system, some of the new ones who are obviously learning new technological aspects and whatnot. We need to get all of you all in a room together to sit down to determine how we are going to educate our children moving forward to do what you have expressed here, reflect national development goals, and not just be order takers, if you see what I mean.
Yes. And not just seeking to pen and author, write something, and this is what we've done. It is not grandstanding. Education is not a platform on which to grandstand. It is the bedrock of society, which enables persons like Maxine, yourself, and all the others here to participate meaningfully in the development of the nation. Could we look at the next slide, please? Now, this is what I am looking at. Education matters. And I want to pause here with Caswell to thank Caswell very much for the opportunity to attend a session at the Ministry of Education last Thursday. Um, my husband Philip attended with me because he's an online tutor himself. And so Caswell, thank you very much. I'm thanking you publicly for the
Yeah,
opportunity to represent you and Unity
Wow.
Workers Union.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah, yes,
proud. I
Freddie.
was
Yes,
wearing a
Freddie.
trade union, the hat of a trade
She,
unionist.
yes, Freddie. She
Thank
was
you,
a delegate
Caswell.
for Unity Workers Union. Right?
That's okay. That's okay. That's not a problem. I don't feel left out or jealous or rejected or abandoned.
Thank you, Caswell.
You are
And
most
I must,
welcome. You are
you
most
could
welcome
you couldn't have had a better person present
representing me.
to represent you, my friend.
I thought so from the time I saw the invitation. The first person that came to mind was Rose.
Oh yes. Oh
and I
yes.
thank you. And so we, audience and persons, our colleagues here, when we get information, we seek to disseminate it. We don't keep it to ourselves. So that um, stakeholders meeting was primarily for unions, and it was to look. Is there a slide before this one? No. It You will notice I start off with ebooks and providing funding. The last one, providing funding. Education comes out of the taxpayers' money. And recently, the borrowing. And
And we
the
pay, repay.
government is to provide funding for education. And this year's budget got the second highest vote from the taxpayers, but still they're borrowing. I didn't have time to study if this particular issue that follows um, has been included in the budget, but from what I'm gathering, from what we heard, it has not been. Let us look at this thing now on ebooks. Get familiar with these my people. This is where the Ministry of Education is moving. What is an ebook? It is short for electronic book. It's a digital form of a printed book consisting of text and images designed to be read on devices like computers, tablets, or smartphones or cell phones. E-books. Get familiar with it because this is coming um, soon. You know how you promote a movie
Yeah,
on
coming
your
soon to a
school
movie close to
screen.
you. Yeah. Theater near coming soon to theater near you.
Yes.
Ah, yes, yes.
Let us go to the next slide, please. The Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training is transitioning from the traditional printed textbooks to the use of ebooks and other digital resources across all primary and secondary schools, beginning with a pilot at all first forms in secondary schools come September 2024. That was the shock of last week for me because I think I am pretty abreast with what's happening. I read a lot, I buy the hard copy newspaper, I'm online, and I saw nothing. And today and since last Thursday and now, I am tired listening to speeches on education by the chief education officer, by the minister of education, by the prime minister to see if I missed something. They had the chief education officer at the end of the term. Remember the glossy PR, um, social media thing
Yes.
about we've come to
Yes.
the end of the term, you work hard, enjoy your vacation, attend classes, etc. Heard nothing, diddly squat about this ebook um, project that will be introduced come September the 24th. I went back and listened at the launch of the task force on literacy. I probably missed something. I listened for something about it, or um, that winner's launch for the design competition that was glossy again with the PR person that they have, communication specialist, taking the limelight. I heard nothing about something as important as the transitioning and the introduction of ebooks to first formers beginning September 2024. I want to make it public information. I give credit to whom credit is due, just as I acknowledge Comrade Caswell. I want to say thank you to Dr. Roderick Rudder for organizing the stakeholders' meetings and the hospitality and the respect he showed to us. Also, the staff at the Ministry of Education who were present at that stakeholders' meeting. I must say also that the consultant Mr. Neil Busher, who is a digital learning resource consultant who was brought in to share on this the digital learning. He was respectful, he was culturally sensitive, and he was not arrogant like some of those overseas consultants, especially from the big countries, and he was able to link the technical side with the pedagogy and the methodology, and was tried patient, not say patiently because it would sound as if we were overbearing, but try to merge the two and to allay our concerns and our fears as best as he could, admitting also that we have a very small window of opportunity to get this thing together. My question is, why the haste? Why the haste? So this is why it's going to be happening to first form students in secondary schools. I forgot to ask, he said all. I asked, would there be a pilot? Why not have a pilot to see, to assess the efficacy, the effectiveness, the ease, the strengths, the weaknesses, the lessons to be learned? And the response was, um, it would be unethical to give ebooks to some first formers at some schools and not all. So we are going full stream with this. I
I
wish
wish I had that
Dr.
attitude. I wish I had that attitude in the medical profession when they were sending out all of the jobs. Anyhow, I'll leave that.
I wish Dr. Rudder all the best. It's a great undertaking. And I don't know if private secondary schools will be involved, but I am saying why the haste. I did my own investigation too and asked of first form parents of first form farmers if they had received anything from the ministry about the proposed transitioning and the ebooks, and I was told they did not. Those I spoke to have not received information or alerts on that one. Could we look at the next slide,
I want to
please?
ask a quick question here, Rose.
Yes,
A
please.
couple of questions as we look at the ebooks. Of course, you can download these books offline. You can purchase them off of wherever, Amazon, the Kindle, if you have Kindle and different apps, you can purchase them. And from my observation, it seems that it's less expensive to purchase the ebooks than the actual hard copy books. But recently we had a spate, I think it is, of technological issues globally. What happens with our educational system that is now going to be so dependent on technology when that area collapses as a result of some, maybe a virus or whatever? That's the first question. And the second one has to do with the health issues that we are now beginning to hear persons point to with regards to children being on these devices so much and so long.
This is these are the things that we raised. Um, there are questions about the devices, questions about the efficacy, how effective it would be, how reliable it would be. Um, all of these are areas that are still being considered and ironed out in time for September 2024. And we see challenges here. Many readers find, before I get to that, please, because they say that we are always criticizing. We are not criticizing. We laud attempts to equip our children with the skills that are needed for the functioning in a digital world. We laud any efforts to enable the competencies and skills required. However, we still have a responsibility to point out errors, to point out shortcomings, and to look at the challenges. And we raised this, those of us who were there, that many readers find the lack of physical pages and the inability to flip through them a challenge of a disadvantage of ebooks. Also, the glare from
There you
screens can cause a strain and
go. Fatigue.
fatigue, leading to discomfort
Yeah.
and reduced reading speed. And
Yes.
these are the challenges that we are assured that they are going to attend to those who would be having problems with their eyes. But if they are so delayed in finding out the physical, visual, auditory, hearing problems of our children right now, how will they be able to monitor and determine those who are having these challenges? These are the questions I do hope that when parents are invited to the stakeholders meeting, this should be a town hall meeting. This should be a town hall meeting. This is serious. I am wondering if by saying we are deferring EduTech 2000 by another 2 years, for another 2 years, if they are still not sneaking in some things through the back door. You remember that book that we're still to critique, the back door, um, on introducing reforms in a subtle, covert way and springing it on us. Something as important as this, particularly those children who are now coming from a primary school where they've been micromanaged, micromanage, sorry, where they're accustomed to the hard books. I know that there's a course I served several years on the secondary school board, and it was costly replacing books for the edutech, not edutech, the schools, the textbook loan scheme. Children did not take care of the books. However, an aside, last year the Prime Minister and Minister of Education said they were giving a one-off $100 grant for primary school textbooks. I read on the social media today that parents are still waiting for that $100 from since last September. This, if you cannot honor that $100 to get hard books for the children, back to this whole thing of the devices. The devices, and we know what happened with EduTech 2000. So let's look quickly at so have I answered your question, Pastor Ferdy?
Yeah, yeah,
On
and I'll leave the other questions until you're finished.
Yes.
At
Could I
which
look at
we are
the
we've given you some extra time because I was looking for Kemar. I haven't seen him as yet, but
yes, is he there?
yeah, I haven't seen him as yet.
Okay,
Um,
because I'm
but you,
conscious of his time.
yeah, yeah. I'll give you
So
about 5 more minutes.
yes, please.
Okay.
So I am concerned that there has been no dissemination on this matter of the transitioning, no public information, no PR launch, because you know that this administration, particularly education, is into the coffee table launches, you know, the magazine launches. So we are having no PR launch, no information on cost. That was a question that I asked, and we learned that it's IADB funded. The cost, I don't know, IADB funded EduTech 2000. Is this going to be like I asked at the town hall meeting at Dighton Griffith? Are we putting the cart before the horse when I asked about the budget for education reform? No, do you all remember this that I shared from extensively? I don't know if the camera could pick it up. Reimagining education in Barbados. I studied it again in preparation for this evening. You all know that I like to do my research. And the only place that I saw mentioned to digital books was on the section on education reform primary, a proposal for digital book scheme, a digital book scheme. There is no way, nowhere on the secondary school that I see anything on ebooks or um, digital books. Therefore, I am saying, why bring this in when you did not propose it? Parents, you have to be on the watch. Again, it is IADB funded. I search, and I have not found any information in terms of the cost of this project. In fact, there's no information online in the Ministry of Education sites that speaks to that speak to the on this project that they're proposing. I notice, I continue, the haste with which it is to be implemented. That is my concern. Remember EduTech 2000 and the challenges with remote learning during COVID. That should be a reminder. And my concern again, the readiness of the students who are now transitioning from primary to secondary school, whose preparation for common entrance was impaired due to COVID, and for whom we had begged for an extension to the examination. Senator Watson begged them in the upper house. No response. None of the MPs begged on their behalf. The Minister of Education did not speak up. No one represented these babies. Now we are forcing on them this ebook. I am saying, couldn't you choose here and not? I could understand the need for progression through the system, but couldn't it be pilot? Couldn't it be, you know, having a
Mhm. Uh-huh.
controlled group in certain
Yes.
schools where some use the e-books and some still
Yeah.
use the textbooks, traditional textbooks? I don't know. What about teachers' readiness? You're asking them to do so much. Teachers' readiness and the involvement of parents.
Parents.
Are
Yes.
we going to come in again and have it, thrown at us and we got to catch it or drop it?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
oftentimes we drop it because we're not prepared for it. And
Yes.
here's
Yes.
the I don't even have time to talk. Someone sent me information and asked me about University XP. In January 2024, the Ministry of Education launched its first e-learning game for primary school under games-based learning, and it's called gamification. Gamification. And using um, the again e-learning game-based learning. These are the things. Someone is saying teachers should have been trained years ago. Years ago. It's now added responsibility. My thing too is policing the books.
I,
If,
I,
if yes, sir.
no, I was just wondering, if Maxine and Caswell had any queries of you here, any questions of you here, any comments. I know you're probably not at the end, but I'm also just
Right.
watching our
I,
time.
I don't mind. I would love to comment because I really, well, let me first say that I really want to thank Rose for the kind of in-depth analysis. In fact, I was scribbling a note as she was speaking at one point. And for me, I look at, and I know you mentioned education matters and education matters, or matters of education. I think that those are two critical things, because in looking at the content of the presentation, to me, what you are offering in the presentation is what I consider to be, what I see as a philosophical underpinning of what, how, and why of education. In other words, when we start to look at this reform and so on, and in the early part of your presentation, for example, you have set out a basis for evaluating the design of our system, the delivery of education, how we're going to do that, the impact is going to have, whether the methods are appropriate, etc. And as you started to talk about ebooks, for example, I asked, there are a couple of things that came to mind, and I don't know if any of this has been shared with y'all, Rose, in the present, in the session that you attended, or if you've come across it. But in choosing the materials that we're going to be assigning for courses, will they be choosing, are all the critical texts, in a particular subject matter available on ebooks? In other words, will the selection of text be based on availability or on the basis of the best text for the subject? In other words, will you have a situation where a class or a teacher may have to do with a particular book because we are using ebooks. They may not have raised that, but this is something that really comes to mind. It's nothing new, as Sugar Cane King is saying. But I was actually trying to look at what had happened elsewhere, because the whole cost of acquisition, who acquires, how is it managed, and all of these things. And this really touches on something here when I read the comment, because there's so many questions you are forcing me, and I hope the authorities to think about as they do this, because you see, we can't afford to come into these things and make big errors. And here's what is being suggested by Sugar Cane King, that it may very well be a very costly exercise. And so in other words, can we afford to mess up if this thing is not thought through properly? Or what is the cost of missteps, so to speak?
Well, I would want to chime in here, because we can't afford missteps, because the missteps, when you introduce those first farmers into secondary school, they're transitioning now into something new. And we will lose that generation. And you cannot build unless you start at the bottom. So you must be able to make sure that this thing is working and working well before you introduce it to first farmers, especially children who mothers and teachers, and in some cases mother teachers, because the teachers mothered them, they were relying on them for everything. No, you are going to kick them out. I remember when they went to secondary school first time, I was overawed. I went to a little school, 160 somebody people in the school, and they're going to murder 800 people. This was a big thing. We had a playing field that is bigger than the whole one field. It's bigger than the entire school grounds and all that kind of stuff. So I was overawed. You don't bring little children into this environment. But the next thing I want to confirm about is that who is sponsoring this? IADB. Are we not scared of IADB? They were the people with the computer test. Remember the computer test? That turned out not to be so a computer after all. It seems as though that Barbados is allowing itself to be guinea pigged. If that is a word, Maxine, if it is a new word, I claim it. To be guinea pig by the international agencies, and we are just there to see how it works. And then they will, if it works in Barbados, then we will roll it out. Use another guinea pig, man. Is there money in it for Barbados? That's why we rushing headlong into this thing without giving it any thought. Because I have spoken to some teachers, and they're telling me talking foolishness. When I told them about the ebook thing, they said, "We talking about foolishness." At least one actually called it foolishness, but then again, he was a B. He didn't believe that this government would do something silly.
No, Caswell and Rose and Pastor Ferdinand, I heard Rose refer to the question of a pilot, and I'm listening to an important point raised by Caswell, which is, how do you manage the transition from primary to secondary in a way that does not overwhelm the children? Now, and Rose spoke of a pilot. Now, there are a couple options, and I'm not going to say no completely to ebooks. As I said, I have some concerns, but the question I would ask, if you're talking about introduction, do you make it upfront one time, what I would call a universal adoption across the school system, and across the school system where all texts are going to be ebooks? Or do you perhaps say, look, maybe the transition for a child from primary who did 3 or 4 subjects but concentrated on 2 for the common entrance, and who now has to come to do 9 or 10 subjects or whatever, this is going to be a bit much. Having a textbook that you can literally manage and turn and have, whether there is, because when you download it and whatever, but but it may be downloadable and it's on your tablet, but then the tablet malfunctions, and so you have a challenge. But so I'm thinking of pilots or introductory approaches which can be partial in relation to the class or form, partial in relation to the number of subjects for which you're going to utilize ebooks in the first instance, or something like that. You see, because it reminds me of some systems where, for example, you move from a paper based, let's take something like the hospital where you're digitizing records and you're trying to put these things on, digitize them and you have them available digitally. So you may decide, some people, typically you're advised to run a parallel system with a lot of these things. And if you don't and you have major problems, it creates, some chaos. So in other words, as you digitize, do you still have access to, your paper files and whatever else? So I'm just thinking about the method of introduction, the extent to which ebooks are utilized across the curriculum, across the courses, etc., in the first instance. But I don't know if people have thought about these things, the pros and cons of different approaches. I don't know, Rose, what your thoughts are.
The Maxine, they are saying that they're going to have systems. Well, the pilot is out. I asked similar questions to those who asked. I suggested a pilot, and they said that's out. And one of the, as I said before, this whole thing of, you can't give some children ebooks and others not, the ethics on the ethical practices, etc. Be that as it may. But I asked about the orientation. And I said it's not just an orientation. This isn't where someone comes in and does a presentation on this is an ebook, the usual PowerPoint presentation. These children need to have a on hands-on um introduction, more than an orientation, dedicated time. There must be time dedicated, which means that there will be borrowing time from getting into the planned term one work. Who says that this can be done in a week, 2 weeks? So they'll be losing valuable subject matter time where it relates to other areas in the curriculum. And, you know, I think that it's a haste. I don't know. I, as I said before, I welcome I welcome opportunities for children to learn, acquire new skills. Yet, yes, we're hearing that children are into the technology, but many of them use the technology, we know, for gaming, for for things other than learning. Here, these devices now, some of them, and I'm concerned, I might be all over the place. I'm concerned that many of them, particularly those first formers who are going to the newer secondary schools with very low marks, especially in the language arts, and there are English, and they are now expected to navigate ebooks, and they do not have the reading skills. I'm not talking about literacy. Literacy is something completely different from reading. They do not have the reading skills, And now we are giving them the ebooks, and we're expecting them to navigate a new school environment, Maxine, as well as this new way of learning. This new way of learning, and it will be across. I think they said it will be in all subject areas, as far as they can have access to the text to download. Is that fair on the children? It's not fair. And and the public, whether parents, whether guardians, whether concerned citizens like ourselves, we have not had a chance to engage with the Ministry of Education on this matter. That
You, you know,
concerns me.
I'm listening to you all comments, and one of the things that's running through my mind is that there seems to be such a, I don't know if the word is disparity between what the children are using the devices to do now, and the whole aspect of using them then for education, for reading and that type of thing, because they play games and they do all that on their devices. Now, can we get them now to focus on a screen that is doing nothing, but scrolling lines of language? There's no interaction, with when you're playing a game, you're interacting with the computerization systems, and you have things going to and fro, and it keeps the child's attention. Even my granddaughter is on a tablet and she is learning her colors and so on, but there's all that interactivity. I'm hoping that if they're going to be, especially if you look at a primary school level, but you're talking about a secondary school level, where it is unlikely they're going to be using what we would call those childish models, to educate. So it's going to be just a book. There are no physical pages turning. There is no interaction where that is concerned. Maybe just a flip of a finger. I am just wondering, with them going into school for the first time, as you've mentioned, because a lot of these children that are going into first form now in the schools are coming out of secondary schools, having completed the common entrance exam. It is a totally foreign environment for them. There is no babying of them like they had in primary school, where the teachers would be there holding their hands through the process.
Micromanaging them over them.
Yeah,
They're
that's
left
not
to,
going
they're
to be happening.
literally left to their own devices.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just wondering if it would not have been more feasible, rather than going straight across the board rules, even if you did it in all the schools, if maybe you did it like how you would do a music class, or something where you would focus on one or two subjects and begin to get them used to the process, rather than be it all across the board at one time. I don't know what the thinking of the government is.
But I don't. I this might sound silly. I don't mind sounding silly, but the Prime Minister said that the phone's responsible for people getting violent. So these
Yeah,
devices might take you out too. so, so we gotta let's save the thought the Prime Minister about this, because the Prime Minister got a problem with these devices. So, and I don't. And she might not want more people to get violent.
you see, my only problem here is that the government seems to continuously continue to make decisions without consultation and without the respect of the major stakeholders in the matter. If I was sitting in a Minister of Education's position, I would want to hear what educators, not my staff, because my staff are not necessarily educators. I would want to hear what the teachers who have to deal with the children every blessed day would have to say about this, and how they would recommend and suggest the implementation of it, because they're the ones that are hands on with the students every day. And this is my concern with the government. They continue to make decisions without interaction. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maxine, you all are
No,
more on the
I,
forefront
I,
of things than
I,
I am.
I can almost predict. I can hear the words no. We introduce it, notwithstanding, based on the concerns that you have, whether there's been adequate consultation or whatever, what has been the response. It is introduced, there are problems, and then we will hear after the problems have arisen, and because this has happened before, we have consulted. No, we are listening government, or we are
That's
responsive
it.
government, or we are whatever, and then you step forward and then you step back rather than do the investigation. My concern with this is, look, as I said, ebooks are reality. Now, as a child who started wearing glasses at 10 years old, as an old woman now, I have tried to avoid excessive use of, because as a child, my problems began. The point I'm making, my problems began from childhood, or my issues. Now, we have heard about the risk of utilizing these things and so on. I mean, it's part of the reality, but there's transition. There are transitions that have to be made, and I just, it seems to me that these decisions come less out of proper contemplation and consultation and instructions taken from somewhere, either internally or external to Barbados, and we are reacting to these things. There seems to be a haste makes waste is a common saying, and so far I have seen multiple instances where, in its haste, the government has introduced schemes, programs, projects, initiatives, call it whatever you will, and having not been receptive to the concerns raised or the questions raised, they come back after the fact to say, no, we are listening to you. So I think that we're not the first to do it. It is, as I said, it's not something that we can reject out of hand. But the question is not only the what, but how you introduce this, the timing of it, the availability of it, the contractual arrangements, because I presume that these things will be sourced by the Ministry of Education on behalf of the schools, or I don't know. These are the kinds of things that you need to know that you have to do. How do you do it, And there is absolutely nothing wrong about taking your time and going through this systematically. I will end by saying, in my early years of training in management, one of the things people used to talk about was the whole question of the Japanese style of making decisions. And what they used to do is they would go through all the iterations, analyzing and so on. So that by the time they hit the go button, the probability of error is extremely low or almost non-existent. But the situation here is we seem to jump at one day and, it seems so because the public seems to be unaware, jump at one day and something comes up and we're going to do this. And then people go back scratching their head, but hey, we didn't think about A, we didn't think about B, we didn't think about C, D doesn't exist. So we have to go back to the drawing board. If this applies here, I would say we need to avoid a haste makes waste situation. That's all.
We got about 3 minutes left, Caswell. So your closing comments, I will say, and then after you, Rose, a couple of minutes. Just have a couple of minutes for your closing comments, and then I'd like to share a quick advertisement with the official opposition.
No, well, I will restrict my closing to very short because I want and no Rose and finish. So I'd like to give her the little bit of time that I have so she can finish off on anything. So I'm just going to say good night. I will see you all on Wednesday.
Thank you, Rose. You got 1 minute.
We're not fighting. We're not fighting the ebooks. We're not fighting the technology. We are just looking at it being more effective and properly done in the interest of her children, and not to write at the end of your report or your tenor, or your reporting, that under you and under your administration, under your watch, we introduce ebooks to all first forms in all government secondary schools. It's more important than that. We are interfering with with the minds of the young children who have gone through the last 2 years of great pressure, and we need to give it more attention and care. Thank you for the link. There's a lot more work I'm doing on it. And by the way, I'll wrap up on this. I noticed that Antigua a couple of years sought to introduce ebooks, and the leader of opposition asked the Minister of Education to resign because it was not done properly, and the whole issue of corruption with the funds. So we could look at lessons learned. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And as I said, education matters. It is as of great importance as all the other national matters, even greater importance, and we have to be vigilant and be attentive. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you too so much, Rose. I mean, you are so detailed and so in depth. All of you are really, to be honest with you, I don't know where the time goes. They tell you that time flies when you're having fun. So I guess we have a lot of fun on the show because time just flies. We have so much to cover. We're looking forward to that session. And maybe, Rose, we need to do a session on education. I don't know, maybe, excuse me. Um, Maybe Marcia can look at that, and as we would be looking at doing a session on the credit unions and so on, and on the financial aspects, maybe that's something. It's almost as if you have to take, because of everything that is happening, it's almost as if you have to take a single show to address just one thing. I mean, when you look at the corruption, when you look at the expenditures, when you look at the areas that are not being investigated, just incredible. All right. So, but what I'd just like to quickly say, and of course, thank all of you, Maxine, tonight again. You and Caswell, I mean, just so informative. And I've been trying to make notes. I just got right fast enough. Even even with even with Rose, I never learned shorthand or speed writing. I never learned either one of them. So I've been struggling here, just trying to make notes. But there's so much stuff that you all have shared, and of course, Caswell. I think Caswell is the archive that they need to get to replenish what was destroyed down at the archives. I think he has to be that individual. I don't know how they're going to tap into his brain. We have to get everything out of him before he leaves us. Maybe they'll have to put some of those things on his brain and transfer all of that information. But
He
just
can't go
amazing.
anywhere in a hurry. He has to stick around.
Yeah. They don't need him either side anyhow. So he could as well stay here. He could as well stay here. Not right now. We need him here more than ever. But just to quickly say to the loyal opposition that there is a poll on the Africa Bridge channel that asks a question that as a citizen of Barbados, would you want the following areas such as housing, agriculture, cricket, World Cup to be investigated and included in the agenda of the Public Accounts Committee? I can tell you that already 97% people have said yes. And so we want to encourage you to just do that search on YouTube. If I can get the link to it before I close off, I'll put the link in the chat before I close off so that you can click on it and it will take you straight there and you can make your vote there as well. Okay, there you see up on the screen, Africa Bridge TV Network, I believe it would be, and you can go right there and you can poll, you can make your, note your decision, yes or no, and you can submit it. All right. So please feel free to do so. Of course, we want you to give the thumbs up. We want to remind you of that. I also saw, I don't know if Dave could put it back up. There was something I think he had about worship, but Dave, of course, I'm going to ask you to get those two songs ready. And the okay, there it is. It's up in the Marcia Week Show and Africa Bridge TV network on your Facebook and on your YouTube. You can see it on both of them there. You can click on the link and it will take you straight to where you can do your voting, and we can see what you as the people of Barbados want the Public Accounts Committee to address. So please do go there and vote, all right, as soon as you can. We really appreciate that. We want to thank, of course, very rarely do we make mention of it, but we want to thank Dave for the tremendous work he does just trying to keep up with us in these different presentations and so on that we have. And we really want to say kudos to you, Dave. We really appreciate your behind the scene activity, your work in the background. We couldn't get it done without you. And of course, to the loyal opposition, we definitely could not have got it done either without you. We want to say thank you to all of you who every night, especially those of you who sign on from the United Kingdom 4 hours ahead. It's 10 o'clock here, it's 2 o'clock there, and you're still with us. We really want to say thank you for making this show the success that it has been over the last several weeks. As I mentioned in the chat, Marcia isn't here tonight because she is still trying to recuperate from a very intense and very, very intense program she had in Trinidad. She spoke with me today, and I think, according to what I said to her, she's leaning toward Pisa. She's said, I'll just leave it. I'm sure she's listening, and I know she's going to hear that, and she's going to laugh, but she's leaning toward Pisa tonight, all right? But she is just trying to recuperate. That's why you're not seeing her here tonight, but she will be here on Wednesday night and Friday night, and we look forward to hearing her and to seeing her once again. All right. So, Dave, thank you so very much. The God of Justice. I just want to see what that is up there. Okay, right. Worship from all sectors of the society. I believe this might be something to do with the Kadooment, yes, the Walk Holy Band. Thank you, Dave, for just pulling that back. I believe they're going to be leading out on Monday, I think. Is it on Monday that's Kadooment Day? Wow. Going to be Kadooment Day on Monday. And they're going to be leading out at the front of the entire process. And that is going to be the theme of what they're presenting, changing the atmosphere over the country. All right. So we look forward to their contribution and support them. And we are definitely happy to see a quality, clean, moral, decent aspect to the Kadooment Day. All right. So God bless you guys. Great having you again tonight. Maxine, thank you. Caswell, thank you. Rose, thank you. And I know Marcia is watching somewhere. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Dave. And thank all of you that joined us tonight. God bless you. Have a great night. Dave, hit it.
Good night.
Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that it's suffering done. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing. Big contracts and not corruption. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. Barbados is too small for me. My pocket full, now you and job they promise me. And a girl like me, want power and more money. You cry transparency, but that's a no for me. Promise us a better tomorrow. Tell me that it's suffering done. Me attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down. She did only want little dealing. Big contracts and not corruption. attack the vote and let me down. Me attack the vote and let me down.
That mass nor English, 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 English. Pretending to be good, I pretending to be good, good, good. Just pretending to be good. I pretending to be good, good. I just pretending to care about people. 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 Pretending, and I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. I'm pretending to be good, 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 good. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people. Good, 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 good. And I'm pretending to be good at maths nor English. I just pretending to care about people.
Amen, amen, amen. Well, God bless you guys. Thank God for the closing that we have, that in the midst of all the seriousness of the program tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we could at least smile and have a laugh. God bless you all. Have a great night and look forward to seeing you on Wednesday evening. Remember to share. Remember to give us that thumbs up. All right. God bless. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.